Welcome to the Cross Creek On Demand podcast, a podcast for you because God is for you. Today we conclude our series, Revelation, How to Live Through the End of the World, with part 5, How the World Really Ends. And we're diving into one of the biggest questions people ask about Revelation. How does the world actually end? If your mind goes straight to fire, destruction, and fear, you're not alone. That's the version many of us were handed growing up. But what if we've missed the point? This episode unpacks the final chapters of Revelation, not as a doomsday warning, but as a love story reaching its conclusion. Not about God giving up on the world, but God renewing it. We'll explore how justice, not chaos, is at the center of God's judgment, and how, in the end, it's not about escape, but restoration. So, if you've ever wondered whether all the evil in the world will actually be dealt with, or if hope really has the last word, stick around. This episode is for you. You'll discover the end of the story is really just the beginning. So, let's talk about it together. How is the world going to end? It's a question we all ask, right? I know, there was this asteroid coming, or it still is coming, and they're like, oh, this has a 7% chance of destroying the world, and then they dropped it down to 3% or something. You guys see that in the news? No? Yes? Some of you? Good. You guys are informed. Good for you. Well, as a kid, I remember this guy coming to my Christian school and telling me that what I'm about to read is how the world would end, probably in the next 20 years. Now, that was 30 years ago, so this is how he said the world was going to end. Let me remind you, I was about 10, I think. Then the 7 angels with the 7 trumpets prepared to blow their mighty blasts. The first angel blew his trumpet, and hail and fire mixed with blood were thrown down on the earth. 1/3 of the earth was set on fire, 1/3 of the trees were burned, and all the green grass was burned. The second angel blew his trumpet, and a great mountain of fire was thrown into the sea. 1/3 of the water in the sea became blood. 1/3 of the things living in the sea died, and 1/3 of all the ships on the sea were destroyed. Then the third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from the sky, burning like a torch. It fell on 1/3 of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star was Bitterness. It made 1/3 of the water bitter, and many people died from drinking the bitter water. Then the fourth angel blew his trumpet, and 1/3 of the sun was struck, and 1/3 of the moon, and 1/3 of the stars became dark, and 1/3 of the day was dark, and also 1/3 of the night. Then I looked, and I heard a single eagle crying loudly as it flew through the air, "Terror, terror, terror to all who belong to this world, because of what will happen when the last 3 angels blow their trumpets." Happy birthday, 10-year-old. Man. And so we were told that we better accept Jesus so we would be raptured to heaven before all these things would happen to us. And I don't know about you, but that's a pretty messed up way to get kids to follow Jesus, don't you think? Whew. But more often than not, that's how the book of Revelation has been used on kids and even as adults. See, Revelation is often used to scare people into complying. Revelation is often used to scare people into complying. So that's why this is actually our last message in Revelation. This is our 5th one. So if you've missed any of them, it's kind of like you're watching the end of the movie right now. So whether if you're here or maybe you're listening online, you're like, hey, I kind of feel lost. Go to youtube.com/yourcrosscreek and listen to the other messages, and hopefully this one will make more sense. But Revelation has often been used to convince people to comply to whatever that church is teaching or whatever. And this image of the apocalypse has captured our culture's imagination, right? It's made people a lot of money with books and movies. People have made careers. They've built churches. They've even built whole church denominations on doing what they call prophecy updates. Maybe you've heard of those or you've seen them on YouTube or something. They ask, when are these things going to happen? This thing happened in Israel, so get ready for the rapture, guys. By the way, isn't even mentioned in the book of Revelation because the world's about to burn. And sometimes there's this underlying glee. We would never say this, but there's this glee that neighbors are going to burn since they didn't believe the right things, and we do. So we're like the good ones who are going to get raptured away. Some Christians even define what type of Christian you are based on if you think God will rescue Christians before, during, or after these things I just read about. But what if all the hysteria, all the speculation, all the fear-mongering is missing the entire point of why the author John wrote Revelation in the first place? What if these images in Revelation mean something different, mean something more, mean something better than just that the world's going to burn someday and make sure you're not left behind? What if, instead of describing God throwing this sadistic cosmic temper tantrum, these images actually show his love and his justice? Like, what if the end of the world, what if the end times, the world doesn't end in fire, but it's restored, renewed, and reimagined? So what if instead of being a scary book to frighten children, what if Revelation shows us the end of the world is actually good news? What if it shows us the end of the world is actually good news and not something to fear? Oh man, I remember the emails I would get during COVID. I think I've brought this up a few times. People so scared because they watched this guy on YouTube tell them the world's about to end. And I'm like, let's talk about this. So now we get to talk about it. So let me ask you, have you ever looked at the horrible news in the world or experienced some kind of injustice and you've thought, why doesn't God do something about this? If there even is a God, why does he allow so much evil to go unpunished and unchecked? If you've ever thought that, if you ever asked that, you're a heretic and you need to leave right now. No, I'm just kidding. No, if you've ever thought that, you are in good company because that same exact question is actually asked in the book of Revelation. Here it is. When the Lamb broke the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of all who had been martyred for the word of God and for being faithful in their testimony. They shouted to the Lord and said, "O sovereign Lord, holy and true, how long before you judge the people who belong to this world and avenge our blood for what they have done to us?" See, there's pain and there's injustice everywhere. And Revelation shows us, as we've seen in the previous messages, that this pain, this injustice, is the result of the dragon, the beasts, and their Babylon. To recap, the dragon represents Satan, right? Who hates God, hates his creation, and especially hates the people of God. And he gives power to leaders and empires in every time period, the beasts. And together, throughout the history of humankind, they have created Babylon or Babylons. And for John, when he's writing this, Babylon was the Roman Empire and its culture of self-glorifying idolatry, immorality, and violence. But for us, Babylon represents any empire, any culture in opposition to the Lamb, to Jesus, and his way and his people. Any system where greed, injustice, and power dominates over love and humility. And Babylon targets, oppresses, and even kills those who pledge allegiance to the Lamb and his way. And as we saw last week, as Revelation starts, Jesus tells his followers to join the fight against Babylon, to resist Babylon by living lives of love and worship to and about the Lamb. But during this time of living in Babylon and resisting Babylon and worshiping the Lamb, are Jesus followers just on their own? Like, do they have to keep resisting and fighting and being persecuted and even being killed forever? Like, is God ever going to stop the dragon, the beasts, and Babylon? And Revelation's answer is yes, he is. And that's when, in graphic, dramatic detail, the author John shows us that in his love and justice, God will ultimately judge and destroy evil. In his love and in his justice, God will ultimately judge and destroy evil. Revelation 8. Then another angel with a gold incense burner came and stood at the altar. And a great amount of incense was given to him to mix with the prayers of God's people as an offering on the gold altar before the throne. The smoke of the incense mixed with the prayers of God's holy people ascended up to God from the altar where the angel had poured them out. Then the angel filled the incense burner with fire from the altar and threw it down upon the earth, and thunder crashed, lightning flashed, and there was a terrible earthquake. Now these images of God's wrath or fire being thrown down, as you see, they're in response to God's people's prayers, mixed with the prayers of God's holy people. See, the judgments of Revelation that take up a big chunk of Revelation and scare a lot of people are God's answer to evil in the world. The judgments of Revelation are God's answer to evil in the world. And John describes 3 sets of 7 judgments. There's 7 seals that bring these horrible things to the earth. There's 7 trumpets that bring more horrible things. And then there's 7 shallow bowls that get poured out and bring all these judgments to the world. And 7, in this type of writing, means perfection. 3 is like the greatest or ultimate expression of something. Meaning, what is being described in these judgments, what's being explained in these judgments, is the complete and perfect erasure of evil. Okay? And as we saw in that passage I read when we first began, the description of these judgments are extreme. Like, they are the stuff of nightmares. If you keep reading, there's these huge locusts that torture people with stings like scorpions, and it hurts so much people wish they were dead when they get stung by them. It describes 75-pound hailstones falling on people. It talks about seas and rivers turning into blood. Like, this is crazy stuff. You don't read this to kids. So, what's going on with this crazy imagery? Now, while some people interpret these events literally, Revelation is written in the apocalyptic imagery. Much like writings, if you're a Bible guy, a Bible nerd, like Old Testament writings of Daniel and Ezekiel, if you've read those, you're like, what is going on here? Well, it's a genre. There's an apocalyptic writing, which was a genre of writing that we don't have in our culture. It used numbers, as we've already seen, and symbols to explain deeper truths. In fact, the word apocalypse, right, that we're all afraid of, in the original Greek, it doesn't mean a catastrophe or the end of the world. It just means unveiling or revelation. See, John likely intended his readers to understand these judgments and all the crazy things going on as symbols of God's confrontation with evil, not headlines of future events that we could kind of see and oh, there's that one. That's in verse 8. See, what we read here is traditional apocalyptic language for divine judgment against oppressive political systems. It's a symbolic, what I'm trying to explain, it's a symbolic style of writing describing God's wrath being poured out on the powers and the systems that abused, oppressed, and killed his people. Think about it. If you were when you felt injustice, right? And you're just angry about, maybe you see kids starving on the news or war going on in the world. And you're I hate that so much. You feel it in your gut. You want it utterly destroyed, right? That's what John is describing, giving it that utter destruction of evil. And so John uses images from Israel's past, like the Exodus and, like I said, the prophet Daniel, to describe God eliminating evil to rescue his people. See, the depiction of God's judgment is meant to give hope, not create fear. It wasn't written to scare us. It was written to give us hope that one day all the evil, all the injustice will utterly be destroyed. The dragon, the beast, and Babylon will be judged and destroyed. But as we read Revelation, we can't read it like we normally would read a book, because these judgments aren't chronological events, like first these 7, then these 7, then these 7, like telling us in precise detail how the world will end. These 3 sets of 7 judgments show the reality of God's complete, perfect judgment from different angles. I would say I'm actually copying this from somebody else. But it's helpful to think of this more like musically than linearly. Is that the right word? Linear, it goes in a line, right? Linearly. It's better to think of it like music than a math problem. Okay? Like, okay, so here's the guy I stole it from, N.T. Wright, super smart dude. He says, this is one of the differences between writing something with words and writing it with music. In music, you can have several lines which all happen at the same time, right? But with words, you have to say everything in sequence. This sevenfold sequence, talking about the judgments, is not chronological. It is an exposition of a sevenfold reality. It's kind of describing all these things that are happening at once. Like with music, you can't be like, it doesn't make sense to just pick out the words and then pick out the melody and then pick out the drums, You have to have them all together to make a song. And that's what this kind of is. But as John's writing, there's this urgency in these depictions that implores his readers to come out of Babylon, to pledge allegiance to the Lamb, because nothing is going to stop God's liberation and salvation of his people. And throughout these scenes of destruction and judgment, we see God giving people chance after chance to turn from Babylon and their idolatry and then start following the Lamb. Here's an example. And I saw another angel flying through the sky carrying the eternal good news to proclaim to the people who belong to this world, to every nation, tribe, language, and people. Fear God, he shouted. Give glory to him, for the time has come when he will sit as judge. Worship him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all the springs of water. See, the dragon, beasts, and Babylon have opposed God's kingdom long enough. And as the story of Revelation comes to a dramatic climax, the armies of the dragon assemble to fight against God. Do you know where they assemble to fight against God? Armageddon. The Battle of Armageddon. And in response to these armies rising up against God, we get one of the strangest, and for some, the most disturbing and misunderstood images of Jesus. And I decided I'm going to read all of it to you in all of its disturbing glory. Then I saw heaven opened, and a white horse was standing there. Its rider was named Faithful and True, for he judges fairly and wages a righteous war. His eyes were like flames of fire, and on his head were many crowns. A name was written on him that no one understood except himself. He wore a robe dipped in blood, and his title was the Word of God. By the way, I typed that into ChatGPT, and I didn't feel like it was appropriate to share the image that it created of it. It was too much. Do it later, it's fun. So the armies of heaven, dressed in the finest of pure white linen, followed him on white horses. From his mouth came a sharp sword to strike down the nations. He will rule them with an iron rod. He will release the fierce wrath of God, the Almighty, like juice flowing from a winepress. On his robe at his thigh was written this title, King of all kings and Lord of all lords. Then I saw an angel standing in the sun, shouting to the vultures flying high in the sky, Come, gather together for the great banquet God has prepared. Come and eat the flesh of kings, generals, and strong warriors, of horses and their riders, and of all humanity, both free and slave, small and great. Then I saw the beast and the kings of the world and their armies gathered together to fight against the one sitting on the horse and his army. And the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who did mighty miracles on behalf of the beast, miracles that deceived all who had accepted the mark of the beast and who worshipped his statue. Both the beast and his false prophet were thrown alive into the fiery lake of burning sulfur. Their entire army was killed by the sharp sword that came from the mouth of the one white horse, and the vultures all gorged themselves on the dead bodies. It's the Bible. Isn't that crazy? Now, often, this is interpreted as a literal future battle where Jesus comes and slaughters everyone who doesn't follow him. But when we look at what's really written here and maybe give it some deeper thought, that interpretation, for me, I'm not saying you have to agree with me, but for me, that doesn't make sense. First, why would Jesus need to do anything to slaughter people? Like, he spoke the world into existence. Couldn't he just be like, done, and no more existence? Right? Like, why does he need to wage a battle like that? Second, it says, from his mouth came a sharp sword to strike down the nations, and then it says the entire army was killed by the sharp sword that came out of his mouth. What? Like, so Jesus kills them by licking them with his sword tongue. Is that what we're supposed to picture? That's what's literally going to happen. What? No, it's a symbol. This isn't describing the violence of a battle. It's divine judgment through truth. The sword of his mouth represents the power of his truth to expose and destroy evil. He judges in righteousness and truth, not in ruthless violence. Now, finally, probably one of the more disturbing images, it said his robe was dipped in blood, which sounds sticky. I don't like being sticky. But his robe is dipped in blood before the battle takes place. So whose blood is it? Yeah, it's his. It's his blood. See, the rider on the white horse with flaming eyes and a sword tongue is also the lamb that was slaughtered. See, what Revelation shows us over and over and over is that through his death and resurrection, the lamb completely wipes out all evil. That's the main point. Through his death and resurrection, the lamb wipes out all evil. And then the dragon and the beasts are thrown into a lake of fire along with anyone who followed them. And then finally it says, death and Hades, the place of the dead, are thrown into the lake of fire. What it's showing is Jesus utterly destroys the dragon, the beasts, and their empire of Babylon. And then he destroys death itself. And in Babylon's place, and this is the not why Revelation is awesome, but I just love this picture. In Babylon's place, he brings the culmination of the entire story of the Bible and the entire history of humanity in what's called New Jerusalem. And here's the depiction. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The old heaven and the old earth had disappeared. And by heaven, we're talking about like space. The sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever." And the one sitting on the throne said, "Look, I am making everything new." And then he said to me, "Write this down, for what I tell you is trustworthy and true." And he also said, "It is finished. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To all who are thirsty, I will give freely from the springs of the water of life. All who are victorious will inherit all these blessings, and I will be their God, and they will be my children." And if you remember back, because you've been poring over the notes from all my messages on this, and you've been studying them intently, if you notice, New Jerusalem, as it's described, is the exact opposite of Babylon. See, while Babylon is described as the great prostitute, full of demons, a murderous culture of death, New Jerusalem is the bride of the Lamb, full of the presence of God. It provides healing and has no pain, tears, or death. In fact, it's a culture of life. See, Revelation and this whole story isn't about escaping the evil world and going to heaven. It's not what it's about. In the end, evil, greed, and injustice are judged, condemned, and destroyed. And the world isn't destroyed. All of creation is renewed and remade. See, New Jerusalem is God living with his people in his kingdom forever. God living with his people in his kingdom forever. And so what John is showing us, what John is showing his readers, is that even though things seem desperate right now, even though maybe it seems like evil is winning, even though it seems like the empire is too powerful and that might seems to always make right, evil's days are numbered, and the future is infinitely better and even more real than what we are going through right now. So listen, the story of Revelation is Babylon will fall. The dragon will fall, and his beasts will fall. Injustice will fall, greed will fall, and death ultimately will fall. But the Lamb has risen, and the Lamb has already won, which is what we get to celebrate next week. See, the story of God as told in the scriptures is completed here at the end of Revelation. The story that begins, in a perfect garden where humanity experiences God face to face every day in a perfect, loving relationship. But then the garden is lost as humanity believes the lies of the dragon, rebelling against God and trying to create a world and a life apart from him. But then he comes and rescues humanity from the rebellion. He shows us the power of his love by dying and rising again to ransom us back to himself. Then he invites us to join his kingdom now as we wait for him to eradicate the dragon and evil once and for all. So it's this kingdom that Jesus inaugurated through his life, death, and resurrection. This is the kingdom that we experience in glimpses now when we enjoy God, when we worship God, when we unconditionally love each other. It's this kingdom that's already here, but not yet fully here. And when Jesus destroys the dragon, the beast in Babylon, it will finally and fully be here forever. See, in the end, love and justice win. In the end, love and justice win. See, Revelation wasn't written to scare us. It was written to show us how to be people of courage and hope and love as we live in Babylon while being loyal to the Lamb. The point isn't that we need to be stockpiling supplies or trying to decode every blood moon or waiting for some rapture to save us from a doomed world. The point is we are in a battle with evil now, but Jesus has already won. And we are called to enjoy his victory by following him with our whole lives now, as we look forward to the final culmination of his kingdom coming to earth once and for all. And the amazing thing is, no matter who we are, where we've come from, what we've done, what we've believed before, every single one of us is invited to join the Lamb. This is one of the last lines of Revelation. The Spirit and the bride say, "Come." Let anyone who hears this say, "Come." Let anyone who is thirsty come. Let anyone who desires drink freely from the water of life. So the question of Revelation is, are you thirsty? Do you crave true justice and peace? Are you tired of greed and violence and lies of the systems of the world? Are you tired of Babylon? Do you want hope instead of fear? Do you want healing instead of hurt? Do you want life instead of just merely existing? If so, then you are invited, as it said, you are invited to come to the Lamb and pledge your allegiance to him. The story of the universe is that God is inviting all of us into his new Jerusalem, inviting us to enter the true story all around us and join him in his mission to redeem all of creation. He's calling each of us into his kingdom now and forever. And to join him, you simply tell him you choose him. You pledge allegiance to him as king. You say, Jesus, I want to follow you. I want to drink that water of life. I choose to join your kingdom. Simply tell him that. And maybe for the first time you've told him that. Maybe just sitting here in your head, maybe at home in your bed. Didn't mean to rhyme. But if that's you, tell us. Like either tell me after service, or maybe you're online or you don't want to tell me after service. Email us at info@yourcrosscreek.com so we can talk about what that looks like to join the kingdom of God. And then this week and beyond, let's enjoy living for the Lamb. And let's rebel against Babylon wherever we find it. Not just by believing something, but by actually doing something. So that's my invitation this week. Let's do something. First, let's ask, how can I bring New Jerusalem to my world now? How can I bring New Jerusalem to my world now? Where can I bring healing? Where can I bring hope? Where can I bring justice? How can I encourage or serve or love someone? How can I join with others to bring light into the darkness? Because that's what New Jerusalem does. So ask that. Give yourself a pat on the back for asking it. But then do something. Do something. What passion has God put on your heart? What breaks your heart? Explore that. What has God made you to care about? Because we can't all fix everything. We can't all be completely brokenhearted about every injustice, but what's the one that gets you the most? Where is God calling you to bring New Jerusalem? A good practice for doing that, and maybe a good example, and this isn't I don't have to apologize. A good example is serving here on Sundays as part of a team, as we create a community that invites our neighbors to discover, enjoy, and share the life Jesus offers together. So in Revelation, the curtain is pulled back, and we see there is a real war between good and evil being waged right now. And we are a part of it, whether we know it or not. And the world as we know it, full of pain and hurt and selfishness and injustice, it is going to end. And when that happens, everything will be remade the way it was supposed to be, and we will enjoy the presence of God for eternity, an eternity of true love and true peace and true life. As we discover more of God and his love, the longer we are with him. Where the pains of this life will only serve to remind us how wonderful our new and more real life actually is. Where we can begin to live life the way it was always meant to be, with the Lamb and each other forever. See, Revelation isn't the story of the end of the world. It's the story of the beginning of our forever world. It's not the story of the end of the world. It's the story of the beginning of our forever world. And this idea, I think, was captured perfectly in C.S. Lewis's Narnia, the last battle of the Narnia series. Yeah, here's what it says. And as he spoke, he is Aslan the lion, representing Jesus. And as he spoke, he no longer looked to them like a lion. But the things that began to happen after that were so great and beautiful that I cannot write them. And for us, this is the end of all the stories. And we can most truly say that they all lived happily ever after. But for them, it was only the beginning of the real story. All their life in this world and all their adventures in Narnia had only been the cover and the title page. Now at last, they were beginning chapter 1 of the great story, which no one on earth has read, which goes on forever, which every chapter is better than the one before. That's what Revelation is about. That's why Jesus came. That is our future. That is our hope. Even as life seems to be falling apart and evil seems to be winning, the Lamb wins.